Our response to the extravagant love should be extravagant love of our own, poured out for Him, without reservation, 100%, just like He gave us. But how do we find practical expression for that? What do you give to the person who's got everything? What can we do for God that He can't do for Himself? Well, Jesus kind of opened up that to us when He resurrected from the dead. Because as we know, the story didn't end at the cross. Includes His resurrection. And there was this intimate meeting between He and Peter where He's talking. Peter had denied Him, and Peter is just filled with grief over that. And Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? He says, of course I do. Jesus says, then feed my sheep. If we love Jesus, we'll help to take care of His sheep, of the others that He loved. When Jesus was asked what the greatest command was, it said, Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. An extravagant kind of love. This is the first and second greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. If we are moved to love God extravagantly, there's going to be more than just thinking about that in a service or when we see a cross. It needs to find expression in our lives. It needs to touch the lives of others. And when we begin to love others as ourselves, to let the extravagant love of God flow through us and touch others, it has this wonderful, miraculous way of spreading. And it's as if Jesus' ministry is perpetuated when His people become His hands and His feet.
I've been a Christian my whole life. In fact, I pretty much grew up in the church with all the time that I've spent there. You know, in spite of all of that, I just hadn't realized that I was lacking something in my faith. That is, two young children showed me differently. I had just returned home from the hospital after having knee replacement surgery. Well, I could get around the house all right by myself, no problem. But the doctor had told me that I couldn't drive for another 6 weeks. Well, you have to understand, I was always an independent sort of man. So this was a really hard adjustment for me. But my children, of course, they would come and they'd take me to the store and places I needed to go. And of course, they took me to church on Sunday. But they were very busy people. They had lives of their own, and it was just hard for them to stay and visit. I just began to feel kind of lonely. Then one afternoon, I was sitting in my recliner and just twiddling my thumbs and feeling rather alone and depressed, when there was a knock on the door. Well, I got up and I hobbled across to the door, and to my surprise, there was the pastor's wife and their 2 young boys standing there holding a pot of white bean chicken chili and a couple of board games. Well, we sat the rest of the afternoon playing games and laughing together, and it was just a wonderful time. And then when they got up to go, the boys turned to me and they said, would it be all right if we come back the next day and spend time here? Oh, that little question just changed my life. I asked them, I said, why do you want to do that? And do you know what they told me? They said because God loves them so much that they love everyone else too. You know, those 2 boys showed me what was missing in my faith. They inspired me to show the love to God, the love of God to others too. Thank you both for changing my life.
My marriage had been on the rocks for quite some time. I was so afraid my husband was going to leave me. Around the same time, a friend of mine invited me to church. So I went. The pastor had a message about peace. I listened. I thought, that's exactly what I need. I need peace right now. That's exactly what I was looking for. So I prayed for it. I prayed and asked peace come to my heart, and He gave me peace. I became a Christian. After that, I started bringing my 3 children to church with me. They loved it. They absolutely loved it. It was great. I thought that everything would get better. But I was wrong. One day when I came home from work, my husband was there packing up his things. He said that he was leaving me. And he was leaving our children. I was devastated. No, I was furious. How could He do this to me? How could He do this to our family? How could God let this happen to me if He really cared for me? My newfound faith was failing me, and it was failing fast. I felt alone, betrayed. I stopped going to church, I stopped praying, I stopped doing all those things. I stopped believing. But then one day when I was struggling to take out the trash all by myself, I saw my neighbor, a little old man, hobbling towards me. He had just had some kind of surgery, so he was limping. And despite this handicap, he took one of the bags from me, and he helped me carry it to the trash. And he walked it out to the curb. I thanked him, and then turned to go back inside, but he reached out a hand and stopped me. He told me that he had missed me at church, and that he asked if I was all right. I tried to brush him off politely, but he stopped me again. What he said next changed my life forever. He told me that God did care. I just needed to let Him show me. And then if He asked, all I had to do was pray. And He asked if He could pray for me. I finally broke down. It was so relieving to know that someone had cared about me and that I wasn't alone. It was even better to be reminded that God cared too. He saved my faith that day. The best part of it is when I asked Him why He was so kind to me, He said He couldn't think about loving God without loving others also. He showed me that day I needed to show love and Christ to others as well. Thank you for saving my faith and my family.